Let's get started. If you guys have silenced your cell phones before we get going. We're here on we're at House District 52. We'll ask you both to make a brief introductory statement. Tell us your name, your party affiliation. We'll have the incumbent go first and describe the geography of the district for people watching online who may not know where District 52 is. And briefly, quick bio and why you're running. Okay. We'll start with you.
Thanks, Nigel. Jeff Helfrich, Helfrich. I'm the House Republican leader. And the district is House District 52 and encompasses the Dalles Dam, downriver to the Sandy River. Then it shoots into Gresham, and then it goes to through Gresham, hits Highway 26, gets in or outside of Sandy, and then takes the backside of Clackamas with Mount Hood and the villages, Welch's, Rhododendron, all of Hood River County, and then it dips back down behind Mosier in Wasco County, and then ends up on Government Flats on the backside of the Dalles, and that encompasses the district.
Great. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, came out of the military, law enforcement, canine handler in the military, came to the city of Portland in 1992, was here since then, retired as a sergeant after 25 and a half years, probably the best assignment, bar none, riding horses downtown Portland. Everybody waves you all five fingers, except in a protest, you get the one finger wave. Dedicated to public service, as you know, city council member, budget committee member, planning commissioner, and then city council member in Cascade Locks, and then later became state representative when Mark Johnson stepped down. Had a stint there in the short session, got some good bills passed, came back, lost, and then came back this last time and won, and then became House Republican leader, and got some good policies going out. And I just want to go back, and I want to continue to serve. I think it's important to have a variety of voices in there and have that pragmatic approach, and I've proven that over the years.
Great, thank you. Nick?
Yeah, my name is Nick Walden Poublon. It's Poublon. I am running for state representative in House District 52. Representative Helfrich did a great job of describing the district. I'm a lifelong Oregonian, so I grew up a few miles north of Eugene in the city of Harrisburg, or if it can be called a city, the town of Harrisburg, and was milking cows on my family's farm from a very young age. Put myself through school, first at the University of Oregon, later at Portland State University. And I get a lot of questions about how I got activated or where I got involved in politics, and it happened at Portland State University. My first week of grad school, I was ready to kind of explore what life would be like as a dedicated grad student teaching in the classroom, and I was diagnosed with a tumor at the base of my brain that first week. And life kind of shifted, everything kind of turned upside down, and the shelf product that the university had at the time was through United Healthcare, and it hadn't been looked at in a number of years. It was really not a supportive product. It would not have allowed me to maintain my status as a student and to get the treatment that I needed. So I went to the university and said, what do I have to do in order to get this to work? And we put together a student health advisory board, which I led and chaired, and within 3 months after having a number of hearings and open forums with students, we fired United Health Insurance and renegotiated health insurance on behalf of 28,000 students for the first time in the university's history. When it came time for me to graduate, the university actually asked me to stay on as their student health advisor, and so I stayed for 10 more years working on student health policy.
What was your graduate degree in?
History. My master's in undergraduate both in history. When I finished, I stayed on as a student health advisor for another decade, making sure that students didn't have to go through the process that I had to go through, where you had to be an advocate and a student and a patient at the same time. Shortly before the pandemic struck, I actually left Portland State University to work as a drug and alcohol prevention specialist in the city of Sandy, which in the area where I live. I had spent a lot of time building community at Portland State University and really wanted to work in my home community. And what
do you actually do as a drug and alcohol prevention specialist?
Sure, working with youth on making sure that we were running naloxone, making sure that was getting available to youth, making sure that we were running warming shelters, getting youth off of the street and into permanent housing, working with elderly folks in a lot of cases too, who had fallen on hard times. I can think of one gentleman in particular who had been living in his house for decades, and when his wife passed away, he started drinking and stopped paying the bills and lost his home.
How does somebody like that get referred to you? Did he come to you through the criminal justice system? Or?
Sometimes they came through the criminal justice system, sometimes they came through the county. directly. I was working with Ant Farm, if you know that organization,
I've read
in
about
Clackamas
it.
County.
Yeah.
So most of the work I did was through them, and so they would often be referred people through the county, and we would find out about them and figure out what we could do in order to solve as many of the problems that we could. It was a very educational process.
So then you go to work for Rep. Williams?
And then I didn't go to work for Representative Williams. Williams stepped down, and Lori Kukler replaced her, and when she stepped in, she asked me to go with her as her legislative assistant. So I served that 8 or 9 months while I was working as a drug and alcohol prevention specialist as well.
So that was in which time period?
That would have been just previous to Representative Helfrich's election.
Okay.
So,
Okay. And then you went back to your job after that?
After that,
I mean, you stayed in your...
I stayed in my job that entire time, and then was also the vice chair of the Clackamas County Democrats at the same time. So working in the county party. I stepped down from the county party. The grant that I was working on at Ant Farm came to an end, and I've been running full time for the last year.
And why do you want to serve in the legislature?
I think that I come from a small town, and I've always lived in small towns in Oregon. And when push came to shove and things needed to get solved and problems needed to get solved, the one thing I learned is that it didn't matter what kind of letter came after someone's name. I realized that Democrats have a majority in this House, and you may ask yourself, why another Democrat? I am a particular kind of Democrat, a rural Democrat, who has grown up in these small towns and cities, who has a unique perspective when it comes to the way we deal with issues like education and housing and issues like that, because I've lived in these communities and grown up in these communities my entire life.
Okay. Great, thank you. So, Leader Helfrich, is it Helfrich or Helfrich?
Helfrich.
Helfrich. No, I struggle with that.
A lot of people do. It's okay.
So tell us, you obviously came into the building with Democrats in it with a strong majority. What did you get done for your party and your constituents despite that strong majority that the Democrats held?
I think you can look in 2023 when I was elected, and even before, I said working together, getting things done, and working in a bipartisan manner. As a police officer, I knocked on your door, there's a problem, let's fix it. So I took that same approach, and in 23, I worked with Representative Dexter at the time when I was Vice Chair of Housing and Homelessness. We were able to get a housing or a homeless package out the door. It was $200 million to those counties that needed it. Worked on some other bipartisan legislation then, but when I became leader, I think the biggest win, and it showed being at the table and having those discussions and being the table of 5, being the table of 4 at the 4 corners there, we recriminalized drugs, and Measure 110 is a disaster. There was good intentions, but we saw the decline of our city, our great state, because of it. And because I sat at the table and negotiated what we wanted to see and have accountability in getting the dollars out of the nonprofits, but getting them to the counties where they needed to go and get the funding that needs to be there. That's probably my biggest accomplishment, is the recriminalization of drugs and the reform of 110. But we can even go further. The housing package for production, worked with, as leader, I have to be in charge of everything Republican-wise, but worked with with Speaker Rayfield and Leader Fahey. And we worked on that package because both Leader Fahey and myself had a passion for housing and getting good quality housing out there, but meeting the goals of the governor. We were able to get another package out the door, bipartisan, and then led the charge with that. And then where the other part is campaign finance reform. That's been going on for a decade or two. They couldn't get it done. And we went into the Speaker's office, and Speaker Rayfield, hey Jeff, do you think we can work on this? Like, absolutely, let's get it done. And at the time, Leader Fahey and I worked shoulder to shoulder, and I said, this will probably be the most consequential piece of legislation that we will put out there. I want to make sure we get it done right. And people didn't think we could get it done in the short session, and we did. And so I think those are 3 prime examples, not just becoming just as leader, but before that as a representative, that it doesn't matter about party. It's about, is it a good idea? Can we get it across the finish line? And I've got a proven track record in working in a bipartisan manner.
So your district, I mean, maybe we could say this about a lot of districts, but you've got Hood River, which is an increasingly affluent community. It used to be a farming, 25 years ago it was a farming community. Now it's a windsurfing and, eco vacation community. You've got, in parts of Gresham, you've got a lot of very different issues, I'm guessing. So tell me about the district and what issues are really front and center for you, especially given the diversity of people that live in the district.
So I guess step back to when you mentioned Hood River. The city of Hood River is what has really become affluent, where you have a lot of dark homes during the winter. You know,
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
moved in from other places and there's nobody's there. And that has driven, that's cost driver for housing, because it's really exponentially costs more to live there.
Yeah.
And then you've got the outside areas, the farming communities that surround Hood River
Yeah.
that are, it's expensive there, but there's not a lot of quality homes that are there. They can purchase it in
Yeah.
there. And then same in the Dalles. And even though I don't have a lot of the rural part of the Wasco County, but we do have a lot of the Dalles. Same thing there, housing, crime. Same thing in Hood River, drugs. Let's stretch it out to going back to the west, to Corbett, to Gresham. Housing prices are increasing. People can't afford to live here because of the bad policies. You have drugs and crime that are exponentially going up. There's an article, I think it was out today, that Portland had their 58th homicide, I think it was.
Yeah.
And we're past what 2023 was. And so,
It's double what it was when you were on the bureau.
yeah. And so then you've got drugs, you've got crime, you've got economy, and then housing, and then the education system on top of that. So it's not, the district may be diverse in how it sits, but the issues are kind of the same.
Okay. So I'm curious what you talked about the housing package that went through last session and
Short session?
Well,
This lab?
yeah. I'm curious what more you think the legislature could do to alleviate the high cost of housing, which does strike every district in this state.
Representative Dexter and myself championed a bill. It was the governor's bill. I think it was 3414 is what it was in the 23 session.
Yep.
That was a housing production bill.
Yep.
That died in the Senate by one vote.
Yep.
The governor could have done a little bit better job in getting the support for there, but the special interest groups that came together and merged into that and said, no, you can't open up any more land in the
Right.
urban growth
It
boundaries.
was a UGB battle.
It was a battle royale, is
Yeah.
what it was.
Yeah.
But when I had Representative Dexter, who's sitting next to me on the House floor, she goes, Jeff, I believe in what you're doing. I'm going to give this a yes vote, even though I know it's going to hurt my
Yeah.
standing with the League of Conservation Voters, but it was the right thing to do. And so we have to have people that want the courage to be able to do
Yeah.
that. So expanding our housing or expanding the production areas that we can put houses in will be the cost driver, but eliminating the red tape, the bureaucracy, what it takes 16 to 20 months to get cement in the ground and building it, but yet you have your sawmills that are closing and all these things, these resources that we have to get from other places that are cost drivers. And so to answer the question, the simplest way is cut the red tape, get them to be able to build sooner and quicker, and get some of these regulations out of the way. That's the cost driver in housing, where you go to Wilsonville and you look at another community across the street. They don't want their community to look a certain way, so they don't allow building. But yet you've got another place over here that's got stub outs ready to go for water, sewer,
Yeah.
and build houses.
Yeah.
And it's across the state.
Okay. Nick, if you were to win this race and you went to Salem, what would the first bill or policy that you would want to work on be?
I focus a lot on healthcare because of the background and the experience that I've had. So one of the first things that I would do is work on some transparency in healthcare, around healthcare. And one of the bills that I'd like to put together is a bill that would make it more transparent for the healthcare receiver, who's on the receiving end of the healthcare, be able to see what it costs in order to have an MRI done down the street as opposed to 2 blocks away. When they're paying 20%, they know they're paying 20% of that total amount, but there could be a lot more transparency, I think, in showing us what that overall purchase price is to begin with, and so that you know what you're on the hook for.
Okay. Is there a bill or a policy or position that Leader Helfrich has taken?
You can do it.
Jeff works just fine.
Jeff.
Yeah, let's go with Jeff at this point.
Let's just go with Jeff. We're good. We'll be on that.
Has taken that you would point to as a point of disagreement between the two?
There's one major point I think that we have of disagreement, and I think that has to do with reproductive rights.
Okay.
I think when Leader Helfrich talks about his support for women's health care, he's being very narrow in that, and discludes women's reproductive rights and abortion, quite frankly, as health care. And I think that's a major point where we disagree.
Okay. Would you like to respond to that?
Absolutely. I have my wife and my daughter. I want to make sure they have the most quality women's health care that they can have. And we need to do that. We need to get the education out there for that. And it's unfortunate that we've already codified in law about abortion here in Oregon, and to include where Germany, France, and even Italy, their limits are different than ours. They're down. But what I'm tired of hearing and talking about is we're politicizing abortion. And let's talk about the real issues where the Democrats have failed when it comes to the economy, when it comes to drugs and crime, and it comes to schools. That's being politicized. Let's actually talk about these table issues are, because there's nothing else to run on other than that. Oh, you're going to take abortion away. That's been settled. We're moving on to the kitchen table issues that matter to Oregonians so we can get them back working again.
The problem there is that he doesn't answer the question. I think, and what I hear on the doors.
What is the question?
The question is, do you support abortion as enshrined in the Oregon Constitution?
That's not on the books, Nick. There's nothing on the books that says we're going to go change anything. That has been enshrined. We have the most progressive part of that, and you keep talking about that because that's all you have to talk about. You have no record.
But just to be clear, can you?
Yeah, I believe in life.
Pardon? Okay,
I believe in
so
life.
you're pro-life.
I believe in life.
Yeah.
That's my personal thing.
Yeah.
But abortion and child care, those are very personal issues to that woman that's there. And so, you know what? They have to make those decisions, but I want to have them informed decisions. I want to have the right health care that's available.
Okay. So again, you if you come back, you're likely to come back. Who knows? But likely to come back in a Democratic majority again. Nobody can tell, but.
My team leaf says we want a couple seats back.
So what, based on your experience so far, what do you want to really push? What would you look to work with Democrats on, or look to just sort of lead on this session that you haven't gotten done yet?
You know, transportation is going to be a huge issue for us. You know, we've got this 2017 transportation package that didn't get funded. Projects aren't there. You got the road show, and ODOT has a $1.8 billion hole in their budget.
Yeah.
How do we fix that?
Yeah.
In order to fix that, they would like to have a $1.90, I think it's $1.90 gas tax to actually get that. So we got to get back to the basics. And what are we going? What are the things that ODOT does good, and what aren't they doing good right now? We can look at DMV just with the voter registration. That didn't work out so well for them.
Yeah.
So we have to figure out what they actually need and what services, because we've had a bunch of unfunded mandates.
Yeah.
Let's figure out what the basics are, and then we can build out from there. But we have to have, that's probably priority one. Housing is going to be number two. And then we have to still go back and look and see what we can do better with the reforms of Measure 110.
So you're in a somewhat unusual position in that you actually have tolls in your district. Both the Bridge of the Gods and the Hood River Bridge are tolled.
Yep.
And yet, in another part of your district, as you move towards 205, tolling is an absolute third rail.
Mm-hmm.
It has caused tremendous upset along 205, Clackamas County, eastern Multnomah County. So I'm curious how you, if you were going to have a coffee in your district and people were wanting to talk to you about transportation funding, what's your position on tolls? I mean, you see your constituents pay them, but other constituents have absolutely rebelled against the idea. So
I can't remember what year it was, but the bridges that were being able to be tolled, it was the I-5 bridge, Bridge of the Gods, and Hood River Bridge. That is allowed to be tolled, and that's just always the way it is. That's to help those bridges up, because the ports own those. It's not owned by the state. So I don't think people have, it's a user fee, they're good with that. But if we're going to talk about tolling on I-5 or tolling on 205, I-84, we've already paid for those roads. If you're going to add extra infrastructure to it, people would be more willing to pay for that, add a third lane or fourth lane, whatever they would be in there. We wouldn't want to stand in the way of that, but to toll people to use something that's already there, that's a problem. And so again, people don't want that.
So do you think they would pay for a new I-5 bridge? I mean, I understand that we'll have a new Hood River Bridge one of these days, and people are willing to pay.
So they're going to put some cement in the ground, hopefully in 25. Yeah.
So do you think people would pay for a new I-5 bridge, because that's part of the toll?
That's part of the tolling conversation. When I was on the Joint Transportation Committee, that's one of the things they talked about. They knew that was going to be there. Where is that door at? Is it the state of Washington going to control it, or are we going to control it? How do we get those dollars in, and where's that at? I mean, we're already bonded $1 billion so far for the I-5 bridge, and that project will probably hit $9 billion by the time we think about getting something done.
So
I'm good with the bridge on the tolling on the bridge, yes.
Yeah.
That's your question.
Historically, Republicans have been very reluctant to add new taxes, but it's hard to see any scenario in which ODOT's budget hole gets filled without some form of additional gas tax, additional registration fee. Maybe it's tolling. I don't know. So what do you think, as leader? What do you think the most palatable transportation package looks like, or are people going to? Because I've already heard that this package is in trouble before it even gets there. So.
It is, because there's no projects associated with it, right? So
Okay.
what am I getting for this? It took 3 sessions to get the 2017 transportation package to get somebody to go, yes, 10 cents, we can get to 10 cents.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if we can get there. I honestly don't. I mean, I've gone to 2 of the road shows. I saw Nick was at one of them at the Dallas, that was the Dallas one. And we just have to look and see where those numbers are and where's this money going to come from, because the economy is going to take a turn. It's already starting there, even though we have the kicker kicking right now, but it's not going to in next biennium.
Yeah. So
I don't know where the money's coming from. That's the question. We have to figure out where that's at. And if we have to raise taxes, that is going to be a tough bill for people to swallow, because it's tough for us to live right now.
Right. It's tough to live, but it's also going to be tough. You know, of course, ODOT's making all kinds of implied threats: no snow plowing, no maintenance, whatever. But a lot of those possibilities are real, and they're particularly real for parts of the state that are typically represented by Republicans. I mean, there are a lot of bridges in rural Oregon that are in very bad shape. There are a lot of highways in rural Oregon that are in very bad shape. So how are you? What's your message to your caucus, and what do you think you're hearing from constituents in red parts of the state about?
No new taxes. That's the one thing. You know, they want to see the weight mile tax be corrected with the heavies, and then the EVs paying their fair share. How do we do that? And do we put a chip in the car and see where you're going? It's like, not a lot of people want to do that. And so just here's the honor system to pay for your fair share of those. EVs are a small percentage of what actually happens on the road.
Right.
I don't know if we're going to get to the package where you're going to raise taxes. They may have to do some cuts. You know, there could be some times where you have to cut staffing and positions. I just don't have all that. Representative Bossart Davis is the vice chair of the Joint Transportation. I take her lead on that, and we've been getting updates. But you know, we have next caucus meeting. We're going to have that conversation about transportation.
Your thoughts on?
I mean, the one thing I learned from that transportation hearing that I went to, the Joint Transportation hearing in the Dallas, was that people are afraid about losing resources, and about what happens if ODOT's threats come true, and how they get to Portland to get health care, and how they get to relatives, and how they move around the district. So it's a very real concern, I think, that people have, as was evidenced by the hearing.
We have sometimes an audits committee in the building. It's never clear to me how often it meets and what its real aim is. An audits committee that I think Senator Johnson pushed for.
Yeah.
And maybe the committee exists right now. I haven't seen much come out of it. But anyway, what in your experience, looking at the various state agencies that you either come in contact with or are aware of or hear about, is in your mind most in need of scrutiny, or most in need of a course correction?
We just talked about it. ODOT.
Okay.
In rules we had, Leader Bowman has an audit committee basically bringing in the accountability portion to having the department heads come in, and we had a sampling of what that would look like. And I think I'm all for it, because you saw then when I called numerous times for the Secretary of State and ODOT, let's have a hearing during legislative days. They finally did. That is, I think you need to have more of that, and actually have real questions, and not pat answers, and not just it's rubber stamped. But no, you have to come to us and answer, because we're giving you a big paycheck. What are the citizens getting in return for that? And where's that waste at?
Were you satisfied with the answers that DMV and SOS provided? Just so for people watching this, if you could frame the issue from your perspective.
So, during the transportation package, or the transportation roadshow that was in the Dalles, the director Strickland came to myself and Leader Bonham. Hey, I just want to give you a heads up, no surprises, but within 24 to 48 hours, there's going to be an article that says we inadvertently registered non-citizens to vote. Okay, can you expand more? Well, kind of danced around that a little bit, and then we had to go to the next meeting. I started getting with my policy people, and the next thing I know is an hour later, the news breaks that this is what's happened. Secretary of State's been involved. and he kept asking more and more questions. What's going on? How's this happening? And he just kept getting stonewalled. They weren't answering questions. And people were just really upset about it, quite frankly, because you had non-citizens being registered to vote, and we had consistently said that this could be a problem from the time motor voter started. What was the most disturbing part we got some answers, but the question that I asked on the opening statement was, I always asked, when did you know about it? What did you do about it? And how are you going to keep it from happening again? I asked him, when did you know about it? Well, he danced that question, and I didn't dial in. I didn't think I had to go full-on detective investigation mode, and I should have. But the answer to that question was, one, did you have safeguards in place? And he said, no, we didn't have safeguards in place. And they danced around that. If you watch that, they finally asked him point blank that, yes, no, we don't have any safeguards. We didn't detect it. Because a third party in Chicago said, hey, how's it going? I should have said, well, when did they ask you? August 1st is when you asked you. So they had, since August 1st to September 12th, and then we got notified on the 13th. And then kind of nothing to see here, what's going on, nothing, let's turn our heads. And I didn't like that answer when I found that out, because you could have told us sooner. One of the most, coming into an election season and where people have questions to begin with about mail-in ballots, and this happens and you're not being upfront and right ahead of it, you should have got everybody in the room and said, Madam Governor, this is what's happening, this is what we're doing about it. We need to get out the public to tell them what's going on. But instead, it took a month, 6 weeks to get it done. That to me is the most disturbing part.
Is that a cover-up, or what would you call it?
They, I believe, didn't want to have egg on their face, and so they were trying to show us what we're doing to correct the problem before it got announced. And as soon as they knew it was going to be a story, then they came out. If it wouldn't have been a story, we wouldn't have known about it. I don't believe we would have known about it. You guys get some reporting on it, some other people are reporting on it, and thank you for doing it, because I think there's more there, but only time's going to tell.
What else do you think might be there?
More people got registered to vote that are ineligible to vote. I think we have to have a full audit just to see where we're at. And it's not, we're asking, SOS relegated their authority of registering people to vote to DMV. What's going to happen when OHA starts registering people to vote? How are we going to check that?
How's that going to happen?
If on Medicare, Medicaid, they will do that.
So when you sign up for Medicaid, you
get automatically registered to vote, and so you're asking people that are doing healthcare, election stuff, and then on top of that, they don't keep the documents, they don't keep the passports, don't keep the copies of all that. So that's the other question. How did you really know, and how'd you double check and verify?
Okay. You have any thoughts on that?
I think it's really unfortunate. I think I agree with Leader Helfrich on a number of the things they said about the fact that there should have been more transparency. Nobody wants the integrity of our elections to be in doubt from either party. And I think that we do need to look into this. My hope is that the number isn't higher. What I don't want to see happen is for there to be a kickback, though, that we then respond to this with a notion that we need to have it be harder for everyday citizens to register to vote in the future.
Okay, I'd like to give you both a chance to ask your opponent a question. We've covered the abortion issue to our satisfaction, so please don't ask that question again. No offense. Leader Helfrich, I'll ask you to go first.
I guess the only thing, I read your voter statement. You said you were unemployed on the voter's pamphlet statement, or on your statement of interest, and then you said you'd been employed all the way through. I was just curious about that.
I'm running for when the grant came to an end through Ant Farm, I have been running for office this entire time for the last year. So if there's any incongruity there, then I need to fix that.
You mentioned that you worked all the way through, and so I didn't understand when you said you're unemployed, but you had worked all the way through for the alcohol and drug.
What I meant was, when he asked the question, what I meant was I had worked all the way through while I was working throughout that process. I said that I stepped down after 14 months. I was working up and through my entire time working in Salem for Representative Google. That's what I meant to say.
Okay. Would you like to ask Leader Helfrich a question?
You've been at this for a while, running for office and serving as a counselor. What is the one thing you learned while running for office?
Hard work. Hard. You gotta want it. You gotta do things for the right reasons.
Okay. I'd like to ask you both just to conclude by telling us in 45 seconds or less why you're the right person for House District 52. We'll let you go first this time since you're the challenger.
Well, I appreciate Leader Helfrich and his response. I think it does require hard work, and I'm learning that throughout this process, throughout the last year. I can't imagine how I could have done anything other than run for this office. I think, look, I'm a small town Oregonian.